Hello, everyone. Dr. John Bartemus here today to talk about an interesting anti-nutrient called inositol phosphate 6 or inositol hexaphosphate or IP6 for short. And this nutrient is very important, or anti-nutrient, I should say, is very important for your health and very important if you are looking to avoid cancer at any time in your life. Very important if you have a family history of Parkinson's disease or neurodegeneration, or if you currently have it. What I'm going to share today can help you prevent further progression of that neurodegenerative disease or help you prevent cancer. So let's dive in. I'm putting the pieces together to help you live a life at optimal. All right, so that nutrient, as I said, is IP6 for short, or phytic acid. And what's interesting is this nutrient is actually historically known as an anti-nutrient, and that's what I learned it to be. And many of you who eat an ancestral type diet, perhaps a paleo diet or some variant of that, has probably heard of phytic acid and forgotten about it because it doesn't really mean anything to you on the day-to-day basis. But if you soak your nuts before they eat them, if you soak your lentils before you eat them, if you do anything like that to your foods, the reason you're doing that, one reason, is to rid that food of anti-nutrients. And one of the most common ones that you're impacting there is phytic acid. And so when I was in school, and then I didn't actually learn it in school, but I was in school when I learned it, and digging into nutrition and things like this, I learned phytic acid to be an anti-nutrient because it is. And its anti-nutrient properties, what does that mean? What is an anti-nutrient? An anti-nutrient is something that steals nutrients from you. Okay, and so back when I was in school doing my own research, learning about this, and learning about the paleo diet and why people, soak their nuts or their lentils or whatever, I said, why do we need to do that? And it's because of the anti-nutrient properties of phytic acid. Well, what does that mean? What it means is if you eat, say you eat a bunch of almonds that you haven't soaked, okay, well then those almonds have high amounts of phytic acid in them. And phytic acid will bind your magnesium, will bind your zinc and your copper and your calcium. It binds our minerals and it steals them from us. It's an anti-nutrient. Okay, so consuming high amounts of phytic acid, the thinking was, will lead to insufficiencies and potentially deficiencies in one or more minerals. And so I, categorize that or put it in a file in my brain and remembered phytate or phytic acid as that's bad, don't eat it, anti-nutrient, going to steal my magnesium, steal my zinc, my copper, my calcium, etc. And I moved on with my life. Well, fast forward, it's probably been 12, 13 years now. And I had a patient last week send me 2 studies on phytic acid because he was researching iron chelators, and he found these 2 papers I'm going to share. So I'd like to thank you, Sam, for sharing these papers with me. And Sam isn't his real name, but it's his name in my book. So if you haven't read my book, I talk about Sam in chapter 10. So here's a shout out to Sam, and Sam's still contributing to my continuing education as a doctor, and he's contributing to all of your continuing education and your overall health by continuing to learn himself and share with me what he finds. So these 2 studies are credited to Sam, and thank you for expanding my knowledge on this, Sam. So 12, 13 years later, Sam sends me these studies, and now I'm learning that phytic acid is actually a very beneficial anti-nutrient. Well, how could that be, Doc? Because you just said that it steals your magnesium, iron, calcium, copper, etc. Well, good question, and we're going to answer that. Let's go there in a moment. But first, let's just explain what it is. Phytic acid, phytate, IP6, you could call it any of those things. We're talking about the same thing. This is a natural antioxidant that is found in cereals, so in grains, in vegetables, in nuts, and natural oils. IP6 or phytic acid comprises approximately 1 to 5% by weight and 60 to 90% of the total phosphorus present in seeds used in food and feed. So it makes up a large amount of seeds that we eat, and it's in grains, veggies, nuts, and oils as well. And you can see right here that I have highlighted in blue. Phytic acid exhibits a high affinity for minerals, we'll call them, okay, to save the scientific jargon, excuse me. And in descending order, it loves to bind copper the most, then zinc, then nickel, then cobalt, then manganese, then iron, then calcium. And chelation with minerals is dependent on several factors, including the proportion of phytate to the metal ratio and the pH. Okay, so you just asked, or I asked for you, how could this be a beneficial anti-nutrient for us if it's stealing our metals, if it's stealing our minerals? Well, because research elucidates that the thought that I had, or what I learned 12 years ago, that it's stealing our minerals, that's correct in that it can do that, but there's multiple variables that impact how much of that is actually happening. And so that's what this says down here. Phytic acid binds minerals that may affect the phytic acid can bind iron, calcium, copper. We've said that. It has the ability to form insoluble complexes with minerals, proteins, enzymes, and starches. So eating a diet with a lot of phytic acid potentially could cause deficiencies in minerals, like we've talked about, in protein and enzymes and starches, because an insoluble complex means it binds and it's not going to break back down. Okay, so when it binds something, you lose it. But in the red here, the first red paragraph, this characteristic may interfere with the absorption of iron, zinc, calcium, and magnesium, especially among people with higher nutritional requirements, inadequate intake, or deficiencies of minerals and trace elements. Okay, so it doesn't impact everyone the same. Next line. Nevertheless, some studies have suggested that phytic acid has no significant effect on the bioavailability of minerals in subjects eating a balanced diet. Apparently, both concentration and association of minerals such as iron, zinc, cadmium, calcium, and trace elements in the diet seem to be important for the binding effects of phytic acid on the minerals' bioavailability and retention. Therefore, in well-balanced diets, the inhibitory effects of phytic acid in the binding of minerals is low, and there is little evidence from nutritional surveys that in a well-nourished population, dietary phytate may have a negative effect on the absorption of minerals. So that's a mouthful, but basically what I learned 12 years ago is it's an anti-nutrient, steals your minerals, so avoid it, soak your nuts, soak your lentils, all of that. But what this research is saying is that actually it's dependent on the person's overall health and nutrient status. So again, principles, right? We are always talking about principles in my videos and in my communications with people. So the principle is, if you are eating a healthy diet and you're well nourished and you have the proper levels of minerals and trace elements, so you're taking your multivitamin, etc., then phytic acid is not going to bind your minerals and steal them from you. So that's the main take home, and that's the big aha moment. And that opens the door for my mind to eliminate what I learned to be truth before. And now I can use this to help people with all kinds of different issues. And so let's talk about what those issues can be. In this study looked at cancer and other pathologic issues. Okay, so right here, anti-carcinogenic effects. These authors show that in vitro, so in a cell culture, say, and in vivo, inside the body, phytic acid has anti-cancer effects. And how does it do that? It prevents and inhibits tumor development by modulating differentiation, proliferation, and death of cancer cells. This anti-cancer protection is related to IP6's inhibition of the formation of free radicals, oxygen-free radicals, via prevention of the Fenton reaction and iron chelation. So iron, we're going to talk a lot more about iron in the next study, but we've talked about iron overload and hemochromatosis in multiple videos in the past. And so one huge role that phytic acid plays is as an iron chelator. Well, why is that important? Iron drives what's called the Fenton reaction. The Fenton reaction is what the body uses to create free radicals. And we need free radicals. Our immune system uses free radicals to kill a virus or to kill a tumor cell or to sterilize a wound. Okay, so we want the Fenton reaction to happen, but we don't want it to happen too much, because then we can damage ourself. We can damage self tissue. So when we have iron overload or copper overload, because copper is also a catalyst for the Fenton reaction. If we have too much copper or too much iron, then we have too much Fenton reaction, too much free radical production, and increased risk of tissue damage. So that could promote autoimmunity, that could speed aging, that could drive atherosclerosis. Okay, so phytic acid is an iron chelator, which helps prevent those things. Some clinical studies have suggested that phytic acid enhances the action of chemotherapeutic drugs and minimizes side effects in subjects with breast or colon cancer. So even if you've already got cancer and you're using chemo, adding phytic acid could be beneficial in minimizing the side effects of the chemo for that person, especially if that person is dealing with breast or colon cancer. And then in the green here, the daily intake of 1 to 2 grams of phytic acid had a prophylactic effect or a preventative effect on the development of cancer. Intake of 8 to 12 grams per day could be used as anti-tumor treatment. So this is right out of the research saying this thing has anti-cancer properties, 1 to 2 grams for prevention, 8 to 12 grams as treatment. That's awesome. Well, what cancers can it impact? Well, this whole page is talking about it. So pancreatic cancer, it has positive effects in pancreatic cancer, and down the middle right here of the page, you can see what it does in the specific cancer mentioned. So pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, cervical cancer, colon cancer, liver cancer, breast cancer, skin cancer, fibrosarcoma, glioblastoma, leukemia, melanoma, osteosarcoma, rhabdomyosarcoma. So there are many different cancers that this is helpful for. And like we said up here, if it's preventing differentiation, proliferation, modulating differentiation, proliferation, apoptosis of cancer cells, then of course it's going to be effective in a broad range of cancers. So that's excellent. Well, what else is it good for? It's also good for a whole host of other diseases. And this table is showing us, I highlighted a few. Neurodegeneration is one that I opened the video with. Parkinson's disease. Okay, we're going to talk about that a lot more in a minute, but that's one of them. Alzheimer's disease. It's been shown to protect against cell damage caused by amyloid plaques in Alzheimer's disease. In heart disease, it decreases arterial calcification. Okay, so decreases arterial stiffness and the promotion of atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease. Diabetes, it stimulates insulin secretion. Okay, it stimulates, it decreases kidney stone development. Pulmonary inflammation, this is really relevant in our current environment. If your lungs are inflamed, that can lead to bad outcomes. Well, phytic acid has been shown to decrease inflammation and scar tissue buildup in lungs. And then it's also thrombosis or clotting is also very important on the minds of society right now. So blood clots, phytic acid is shown to decrease platelet aggregation or decrease clotting. So again, this has application across many potential diseases. Also for cholesterol, high cholesterol, specifically triglycerides, it has a role. In ulcers, it has a role. In GI inflammation, especially the colon, it has a role. So this is a very important, potentially important anti-nutrient to have in your first aid kit if you watched last week's video, or 2 weeks ago now, I guess. And then lastly, mycotoxins or mold is always a sexy topic. And so these authors looked at using phytic acid in the context of mold, and in adding it to the diet of rats significantly decreased the cell damage and the reproductive disorders caused by aflatoxin in the testicles of rats. Okay. Also, the using phytic acid significantly decreased morphological changes induced by mycotoxin fumonisin B1 in the jejunum, or the small intestine of pigs. So again, as a mold, environmental mold, aflatoxins, fumosins, these things are in our foods. And so some people are more sensitive to them than others. Well, in animal models, phytic acid is showing to be useful in preventing damage from mycotoxins to the reproductive tract and the small intestine. Where is it used? Well, it's in our foods, but it's also used in the food industry. Phytic acid is an excellent preservative of juice and meat products. In addition, it's used to preserve color, prevent odors, preserve nutritional value, and other specific characteristics of meat and derivative products like mortadella, salami, ham, and fresco sausage. It also helps preserve unsaturated fats, which can go rancid quickly. Those are your omega-6 fats and your omega-3 fats. So phytic acid, or IP6, inhibits lipid peroxidation, which, when lipids become peroxidized, that promotes free radical production and damage to tissue. So this study concludes by saying the protective effects of phytic acid have been demonstrated for various pathological conditions, intoxications, mycotoxins, and cancer. So that's huge. Now let's finish. So that study, by the way, was called Phytic Acid from Anti-Nutritional to Multiple Protection Factor of Organic Systems. This next study is looking at Parkinson's specifically, and more specifically at the role of phytic acid as an iron chelator. And this is a cell culture model. And so the authors state iron may play an important role in Parkinson's disease since it can induce oxidative stress-dependent neurodegeneration. And I talk about this in chapter 1 of my best-selling book, The Autoimmune Answer. Chapter 1 is all about Parkinson's disease. And I talk about the relationship of iron to neurodegeneration and Parkinson's in that chapter. Well, this study is looking at that as well. And they say phytic acid is an iron chelator. So what they want to do is study, does the iron chelation effects of phytic acid prevent dopaminergic neuron damage by a toxin called 6-hydroxydopamine? Okay, and for those who aren't aware, Parkinson's disease, ultimately you're damaging dopaminergic neurons, and that means neurons that use dopamine, and dopamine helps you move, it helps you go. Okay, as well as it's your feel-good neurotransmitter. So anything you say, that was good, I want more of that, that's a dopamine kick. Okay, that's that could be sexual intercourse, that could be food, that could be exercise high, that could be illegal drugs high, whatever makes you feel good, that's dopamine. Okay, if you lose dopamine, you lose your movement. So what do you see in Parkinson's? They slow down, their posture decays, they get a tremor, they have trouble speaking and thinking, everything's slow. Okay, so the more dopamine neurons you lose, the more the disease progresses. And iron overload will exacerbate or speed the progression of the disease due to, what do we say, that Fenton reaction, increased free radical production, and the resultant free radical damage of dopaminergic neurons. So these authors say phytic acid is a food component considered as an anti-nutrient due to its ability to chelate minerals and prevent their absorption. But it's also considered an antioxidant due to its ability to inhibit free radical formation. Phytic acid may influence oxidative stress by altering cell signaling pathways or influencing the activity and expression of antioxidant enzymes, and may be beneficial in preventing many types of cancer. So we saw that in the previous paper, but just a review there. So if we jump down to the end, oxidative stress, which may be due to excess iron accumulation, mitochondrial dysfunction, and decreased antioxidant status, is attributed to the pathogenesis of Parkinson's disease. In the red, non-ferritin-bound iron may be involved in oxidation of dopamine to release hydrogen peroxide and highly toxic hydroxyl radicals. So if you have non-ferritin-bound iron, you have free iron, that can promote the oxidative stress, which damages the neurons and speeds Parkinson's decay. Iron may also increase alpha-synuclein, the abnormal protein aggregate associated with Parkinson's disease. So in Alzheimer's, you have buildup of amyloid plaques. In Parkinson's disease, you have alpha-synuclein plaques. And so these guys are saying iron may increase the alpha-synuclein. So if we have too much iron, we can drive the free radicals, we can drive the protein plaque buildup, and you speed the neurodegeneration of the Parkinson's patient. So if we can prevent those things by chelating that iron, by binding it up and getting it out of there, then we can prevent or lower the total free radical load. We can slow the alpha-synuclein aggregation and hopefully slow the disease process and keep that person's quality of life higher longer. So basically, I don't need to read through all this for you. We'll just get to the good stuff, which basically says that phytic acid decreases both the degeneration, the oxidative stress, and the DNA damage in Parkinson's disease. And they use a dose of 30 U-moles per liter. And using that dose completely counteracted the DNA damage and the oxidative stress. Going higher than that didn't show any more benefit. So phytic acid prevents the oxidative or counteracts the oxidative stress in Parkinson's and the DNA damage, helping preserve the neuronal integrity in those patients. They also found that catechin, which is a major polyphenol in green tea, catechin also protected against oxidative stress and cell death in Parkinson's disease. So green tea can be beneficial in Parkinson's via its catechin component and probably multiple other mechanisms as well. In Parkinson's patients with high iron, medically, there's an iron chelating medication that is used, often called desferrioxamine, DFO, but that has many potential side effects such as seizures, wheezing, blurred vision, and irregular heartbeats. So, these authors looked at how does phytic acid compare to DFO as an iron chelator. And what they found was, quote, in the green, our results suggest that IP6, or phytic acid, might be as effective but safer than DFO because no toxicity was found with long-term administration. So here's a natural thing that is widely available with a low side effect profile that could be used to chelate iron in Parkinson's patients, or, conceivably anyone else with iron overload issues, without the potential side effects of, say, seizures that DFO presents. So again, humans consume large amounts of this compound in their daily diet if you're consuming a healthy diet. And again, if you're consuming a healthy and balanced diet, then you're not at risk for the anti-nutrient properties of phytic acid. And if that number is true, humans consume large amounts, 2 to 3 grams in their daily diet, well, then that would be above the threshold that the previous study said was protective in cancer, right? In cancer, 1 to 2 grams a day was prophylactic in terms of preventing cancer. 8 to 12 grams was an actual cancer treatment. This study says humans consume 2 to 3 grams a day in their daily diet. So if you're eating a well-balanced, healthy diet, and I wouldn't describe that as the My Plate diet or the food pyramid diet, I would describe that as a well-balanced healthy paleo or ancestral type diet, then you're consuming enough of this on a daily basis naturally to be providing you anti-cancer benefits. If you're consuming a typical American diet, you still may be getting enough of this gram-wise to provide those benefits, but you may not be sufficient in vitamins and minerals and the nutrients you need like the ancestral diet eating people are. So then you're opened up to the risk of this truly acting as an anti-nutrient and chelating your copper, iron, calcium, etc. So if you're on that standard American diet, here's reason number 1,777,645 that you should move over to a more ancestral type diet. So in conclusion, these authors state phytic acid prevented toxin-induced death of dopaminergic neurons and was protective against the oxidative stress caused by iron excess and the DNA damage caused by iron excess. So as an iron chelator in Parkinson's disease, IP6, inositol phosphate 6, inositol hexaphosphate, or phytic acid, it appears should be part of your daily regimen. So with that, we will open it up to questions.
So I have a question relating to cancer. Most everything I've read, if you've got cancer, you want to do a lot of juicing, eat a lot of vegetables. So if someone really doesn't like vegetables, could they just do with this IP6?
This would be better than nothing. Yeah, I think this would be better than nothing based on what
It's kind of the same principle.
So part of the benefit of consuming a lot of vegetables is this is going to be in that, right? Because phytate is found in veggies. So that's got to be part of the mechanism that is anti-cancer in consuming high amounts of vegetables. But there's many other mechanisms when you're consuming whole foods, right? So this would be in there. You know, eating a high amount of vegetables would be very alkalizing from a pH standpoint, and cancer likes an acidic pH, so that would be working in your favor. High vegetable counts will be providing all kinds of polyphenols and flavonoids, you know, such as catechin, which is, I mean, you know, that's in green tea, but there's a whole bunch of these different things in veggies. Like quercetin is one found in onions, right? So there's all of these things, and every day we're finding more reasons that fruits and vegetables are healthy for us because we're finding more flavonoids and polyphenols that provide antioxidant protection and are anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory and antiviral and all this stuff. So the best thing to do would be to consume high amounts of, you know, non-GMO, organic, blah, blah, blah vegetables, because there's a bunch of mechanisms in whole food. But if someone's like, absolutely, I can't do it, won't do it, whatever, then, you know, phytic acid, making sure you're getting enough phytic acid would be at least helping you down the mechanism that these papers are showing you. Make sense? Is it a get out of jail free card? Probably not. But, you know, the more anti-cancer type things you can do and stack together, the better. So if veggies are out, then yeah, I mean, this would provide you the protection that this provides you.